So when we click on assessments in the navigation menu, we come here to the assessments window. As you can see, our sample user has already created 2 assessments. When we want to assess students in LeAH, we have 2 options. We can create a new score assessment, which doesn't actually use any of the item types. It doesn't print the assessment. It doesn't print any bubble sheets. And there's no scanning involved. You have to manually enter the scores. But a score assessment is designed for assessments that you give outside the system, but that you want to use LeAH to help analyze the results. I'm going to refer you to the knowledge base for those because they're relatively straightforward. You can also create an itemized assessment, which is what I'm going to discuss this evening. So whenever you create a new assessment, whether it's a score assessment or an itemized one, the first thing you do is give it a name and description. And it basically is like creating an empty container for it. We do the same thing to rubrics too, because that has to be saved to the database before we can start adding the parts to it, right? So once you give it a name and description, then everything else happens on the next screen. So go to the Options menu and click Manage, and that takes us here. Now this unassuming little screen is where all the magic happens. The items that you add to an assessment are contained in sections. And this is the screen where you add sections and fill them up with items. Each section has to contain the same types of items. So that means there's 6 item types and 6 different types of sections that we can have. Multiple choice and true false, fill in the blank and short answer, and extended response and essay items. Now I grouped these item types this way on purpose. Because of the way that our scanning technology works, the true, false, and multiple choice items have to come before the other types of items. And the essay and extended response items have to come at the end, which sort of leaves fill in the blank and short answer hanging out there in the middle. If you add the sections to your assessment in a different order, LeAH will put them in this order before printing. So something to keep in mind. All right, so let's go ahead and add a section to our assessments. And so first, we're going to need to decide what kind of items go in this section. And then as soon as we select an item type, default instructions will automatically fill in down below. You can modify these instructions if you like, but they give you a good starting point. Next, we need to decide how many items are going to show for this section. Now, this is actually an interesting question because true, false, fill in the blank, and short answer sections all have to have at least 2 items. That has to do with the way that our scanning technology works. There has to be at least 4 bubbles per section for the camera to be able to find it. And each of those item types only has 2 bubbles. So those need at least 2 items, but a multiple choice, essay, or extended response section can have as few as 1 item. Finally, give the section a name and click Save. Once you've created the section, you can start adding items to it. You can either create new items on the fly, or you can select them from your item bank. Now, I know the item bank sounds really cool, and it is, but I don't want to go there just yet. I will get there, though, I promise. Let's click Add a New Item so I can show you how that works. Now, I have to warn you that you're about to see some truly sophisticated assessment items here. Not really. So seriously, these items are just for example purposes. They're clearly not real, and they actually wouldn't tell you much about student mastery. I'm just saying. But simply put, all of the Create Item windows have a box like this one where you type out the text of the item. Mine just says, this statement is false. Some simple text formatting options are provided to you in this editor, along with the ability to upload images to display as part of your item. This can be really useful for diagrams or photos or things of that nature that need to be visually present as a part of your item. Each item also needs a name, which should be as descriptive as possible since this is how it's going to display in the item bank. All items must be linked to a standard, and they may be linked to a learning goal. And then each item also needs to be ranked as either low, medium, or high cognitive complexity. Now, depending on what kind of system you use to classify that, whether it's Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge or some other system to describe rigor, determine how you're going to map that to the 3-level system. Okay, so all of the fields that I just pointed out to you are included in every item, no matter what kind of item it is. The true-false item also has a spot to indicate whether that statement is either true or false. Now, after I save and close this item and reopen it, now you'll notice that there's an item preview window in there as well, showing what the item will look like when it's printed. Now again, the preview can't be generated until the item has been saved, which is why I didn't see it there before. Now I've continued to add items to the true-false section until I'm satisfied. Notice that I've told LeAH that I only want to show 2 items, but I've put 4 items in the section. So when I generate printable forms of this assessment, it will randomly select 2 items for this section each time that it generates a form. So it'll sort of shuffle that up. All right, so now let's add some other sections or some other section types and items. We'll go on to multiple choice. Now, in a multiple choice section, in addition to the regular fields, the multiple choice items have a place for you to specify how many alternatives should be presented to the student. You can show them 2 options, 3 options, 4, or even 5 options, but it defaults to 4. And then you can specify whether you want those options to be presented randomly or in the order that you specify. You then also need to specify what those alternatives are in the possible answer boxes, and you have to identify one of them as the correct response. Now, even if I'm only showing 4 possible answers, I can add as many distractors as I want so that when I generate assessment forms, it'll choose a randomly selected subset of those distractors in each version. Now, fill in the blank and short answer items use identical windows. And the reason is they both print on the answer sheet like this. Now, the way this works is the student is going to write their response in the box, and you'll mark whether it's correct or incorrect. You may also enter the correct response in the box at the bottom of the window. LeAH's not going to check it for you, unfortunately. That'd be cool. But whatever you put in this field will print on the answer key so that you can refer to it as you're scoring student work. Now, essay and extended response items may be a bit confusing at first, so I want to make sure that I'm really clear, that I'm as clear as possible here. You might notice that the field for the standard is missing from this window. Essays and extended responses are scored with a rubric, and when you generate a rubric, you specify standards in all of the rubric elements. So really, the essay and extended response items are inheriting the standards from their rubric, which seems to make sense, but you might also notice there's not a place to attach the rubric yet. So unfortunately, it doesn't have a spot to do that because just like the preview window, the item needs to be saved before the database can attach a rubric to it. So the workaround here is to fill out the question content, fill out the name, then save, close, and reopen it. Now you'll see the preview, and you'll see the Add Rubric button. The Add Rubric button will let me attach an existing rubric, which I can find in this part of the window, or it will allow me to create a new rubric by typing in the name and clicking Create. I'll go ahead and do that so I can walk you through that process. So once I click Create, you'll see that the edit window reloads, and now the rubric is attached to the item here. Now, at this point, that rubric has no content. It's a placeholder, just like before where we do the name and description and then we have to add stuff to it later. Same deal here. So what I'm going to do is click that link to go to the rubric edit window. Now, on this window, you'll see your empty rubric. Go to the Options menu and choose Add Element. As you edit the element, be sure that you give it a name, a name that describes which aspect of the student's response is being scored with this element, identify the standard to which it's aligned, don't forget the standard because without it, the element won't save. You may assign a learning goal, but again, that's optional. You also need to set the number of points that this element is worth, and that number of points has to be a multiple of 4 because it's a 4-level rubric. It goes from poor, average, mastery, exceptional. It's basically like a multiplier. Is each one of those levels worth 1 point, or is each one of them worth 2 points, and so on. Finally, describe those 4 different levels. Now, hopefully, your rubrics will be a little bit more detailed and a little less subjective than this one. But hey, with a name like Sample User, what can you expect from this guy, right? So that's a quick primer on how to create all the different item types. We're going to have to navigate back to the Manage Assessment window to finish up. So on the way, let me go ahead and show you that item bank. Now, every item that you write or that another user has shared shows up in your item bank. Now, in this window, you're really going to get comfortable with the gray filter sort bar because this window is going to wind up having a lot of content in it. So I don't want to look at this stuff. Let me scroll down a little bit and, oh, hey, look. There's an item here that has been shared by Mrs. Lavery. It's been pretty highly rated, too, at least by the 2 people that's rated it so far. Now, you can see that it hasn't been used in the assessments yet, but as it is, those numbers are going to increase. You'll see the number of students that have responded to that item increase and the number of assessments in which it's been used increase as time goes on. LeAH is also going to calculate the average score that students have earned on this item across all the times it's been administered. And that average can give you sort of a sense of the overall item difficulty. Now, the items that I just created for our sample assessment are here in the item bank as well, so that I can reuse them or share them and that other people can use them. And looking at the items that I created, I don't know that I would do either of those things. But I should share something with the LeAH community. So as I'm scanning here, I see a performance assessment that I created here for a unit on an improvisational theater in my drama class. Okay, so I never taught drama, but it would have been cool. So if I want to share this item, I roll over the options menu, and I go to share. And then I'll get this warning. Now, this is important. You can only share content that you actually have the rights to share. If you created the content yourself, that's easy. It's yours. You can share it. Feel free to read the linked plagiarism and piracy page for more details. But don't worry. It's written for regular people. It's not written for lawyers. So the improvisational unit, since I wrote this item myself and everything in it, I'll go ahead and share it, and I get this confirmation that it's been shared. Now, my item is out there for others to use and to rate and to positively reinforce me for my contribution to the community.